Okay, now it comes to the engineer's report for the solar farm.
I guess it might be easiest to kind of start from today and work backwards where we need to. By email, we did ask them to stop work today. The reason for that was, one, there's the ongoing issues with the downstream water that's flowing, how much that is, whether the mud that's being, I guess sediment laden is probably the technical term for it, but the biggest concern was the fact that they continued working while there was issues with their perimeter controls. They hadn't yet corrected those, and they continued to muddy the site that was already muddy and continued to be draining at this time. So we asked them to stop work immediately when we sent that email. I did follow up with them. They requested, can they get their crews into the site to repair the ENS controls that are supposed to be controlling. They're worried not getting everything in place before the next storm. I said, absolutely, you can do that. They're looking to do that and only that tomorrow, but looking for possibly Wednesday to come back in. I'll stop out, check the site when they request it. As long as it's not making an area that's already stabilized, muddy, or worsening anything, then I don't think we really have an issue there with them continuing to work. However, I would like to see them get all the perimeter controls back up. Some of that storm did hit their perimeter controls, and they do need to reestablish them.
Yeah, they're gonna have to redo their fencing in a couple different places. And now we saw this coming.
Yeah.
Now you can actually see what the damage is. So.
We had concerns with what they first showed. They revised that. Now they have a problem that they say can't be fabricated, so they're trying to come up with it. Basically, it has to be something. There's two areas that have to pass under a fence, three maybe, I think. But they still want to create a barrier of sorts, but it still has to pass in. Over near the railroad fence, you're right. Yeah. You can see what's going to happen if they don't have a better solution. So they are working on that specifically. So they're working on getting the site back up to where it should be. I had taken a trip out there almost 2 weeks ago, met with their superintendent for the site, walked the site. The ENS controls per their permit plan were in place where they're supposed to. They've actually added some controls, additional silt socks in areas that make sense, but they've also tried to use, you might be able to help me out here, Dean, they're socks that are really meant to take out additional sediment from the water, and they're putting it in certain pipes that the water's passing through. Deflocculant?
Yeah.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah, I think it's something like that they call it.
So they put a couple of those in. They did have at the last storm about 2 weeks ago, have an area where they found water was bypassing one of them. They reinforced that, but with this last storm, it was bigger than the controls really could hold. So they're looking to fix those again. But their basins, I would say, there's one basin that doesn't have a lot of grass to it or mulch, but it's designed to infiltrate, and it's the one that's infiltrating exactly as planned. So even without the grass, I don't think that's really a concern at this point. The other parts, even where there's not grass, they do have mulch down. The site itself, we did ask them to improve the stabilization. The worst areas are where they're still working, so they're still having some of that. But other areas, even though they've gotten it, it's still spotty. So that's where we're asking them to bring that up, make it better a little bit, basically. So that's where we're at the site right now. The complaints that did come in were on Weaver Road, and that was, I spoke to the complainant that came in on that one. They were really accessing Weaver Road, and they still haven't completely addressed it. They really have like 3 accesses on Weaver's Road to the site. They've expanded that, and they did so because they said we put up a fence, we limited our own access. That's not our problem. I asked them to put up a tape or something that does not allow any free access to Weaver Road. They did about a third of what I asked. We gotta extend that a little further. And they need to improve their entrances to what it should be for a construction site. They tried to do a little more than what's on the plans, but it still needs a little improvement. So they're working there. But they do have, I did put them on notice that their access to Weaver Road, the way they are, they're signed on to making any and every repair that needs to be done on that road when it's done. We said that in the approval process when the plans were approved, but they've kind of furthered that with the way they were accessing a couple extra locations. We did try to ask them to not congregate along Weaver Road. They're still parking on their property, which is something that it's expected they gotta park on there. I don't know if it's improved or not.
They still stand in the middle of the road line to go to work, then they have to get off the road. They're right there in the middle, right at my driveway, in the middle of the road is where they congregate to do their morning meeting. They did it this morning again,
In the road.
in the road. Yes,
So this is my concern, and probably the public here will have more comment. They have used up more than all their goodwill. We gotta tighten down 1,000% now. They don't have the weeds trimmed. They use Weaver Road like it's part of the property. They have 100 acres, or how many acres in the farm? That's their that's where they need to be. And what really tells the story of the part that I think they just don't care is after 10 inches of rain, they're working today. I mean, that's beyond unbelievable to me. That goes to show they just flat out do not care, and I am done with that.
That's just poor judgment.
Yeah.
That's not even poor judgment, that's just blatantly saying, we don't care
ignorant.
about what the community needs here. We're gonna do what we want because you guys aren't gonna stop me. But I'm done with that. I'm done with that.
I've sent pictures since March of the same thing, since March. And nothing has been done in this township to correct it.
Our road was blocked for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time.
And everybody just brushes it off.
To the
And
point-
they are making a fool out of you guys. And I told you that was gonna happen from March on, that if you guys don't bring your A game, go home. And
So
you
the
guys
guys-
look like fools.
He's made a couple complaints about the road. Every time we've gone out, if there was cars there, we asked them to move. Once they refused to do that, and we approached them on what the actual plans allowed for, they've applied for road permits for 2 entrances. But again, we told them, due to what you have done to the road, Mertz Road is now a road we need to walk, and whatever improvements are necessary at the end, that's what needs to be done. But I agree, they were not following the plans, and when they blatantly did not follow them or correct for it, we then had them apply for the permit and bond any of the improvements that they're gonna be doing, so.
But I still think they're not following simple common sense practices, doing what they want to do. I mean, it's just a mess.
Yeah.
And I don't know what our enforcement is ability to do or what the conservation did. I mean, there's multiple issues. We have neighbors with wells contaminated. We have a whole bunch of stuff, and here we sit. We gotta, this just has to change.
Great farm land. We can now look at it.
What percent are they done? 50%, 20%?
They still have a lot of work. I mean, I'm not gonna,
50% yet.
I bet you they're probably 50% because even after they get the solar panels in, they still have to, they have amended soils to put in. That's still an issue we're dealing with. But they have a few months worth of work left for sure.
Can I just ask a question? I'm confused of this whole project. Why is it that they were allowed to strip 110 acres of vegetation and the stormwater wasn't complete? Does everybody in this room think that we were gonna have a rain like this, or even a 2-inch rain, and it was gonna run off that stripped topsoil that they rolled into place without any stormwater control in place? The NRCS came out years ago, put it in a waterway. And the first thing they did was rip that out. Now it's a free flow from the bridge all the way to the Fleetwood Lyons Road. There is nothing in that first retention pond ever.
Yeah.
Never.
There is-
No water. it gets down to the Lyons Road, and the overflow pipe is 1.5 feet off the bottom of the floor. It's still running today. How do you call that a retention pond? A retention pond holds back water, and then when it reaches a certain height, it goes into the overflow. There's no overflow. This may work as you guys think it might at the end, but we aren't close. We had a dry May. Why isn't their retention ponds finished? What were they doing when it didn't rain for 6 weeks? Who was holding them accountable? Now they're out there taking their equipment and making ruts all over the hillside. Do you think the water, when it rains for the next 40 years, is going to sink into the ground naturally, or is it going to follow the ruts that it's now started?
No, and that's part of the reason that we're working with them. It's just speaking in plain, hold on a second, but the reason we reached out to them about the soil amendments that they have to do, their assumptions have been somewhat shot for what we agree with. So we're not approving with them moving forward until they show us that the site is capable of doing what they assume. Because the way they did handle the site cut, and they put all their basins in per the plan before they stripped anything. They had to. They would, if they didn't have those in, they
They're
didn't
not
have them
working.
up in order, they
They're not
would have
working.
been shut down to move forward.
Are they working?
So, not right now, no.
They're not.
That very first
So-
one.
Oh, I thought you, I'm sorry, I thought you said were the
They're not
the-
working.
crew working.
But what about the side over across the railroad? Did anybody walk that to see what the grass growing there is actually doing? Because they rolled it with a roller, with a vibratory roller, and threw grass seed on
So
it
it's,
in the middle of a drought. We had rain in March. We had rain in June. I've shown you pictures of their silt socks where the water was missing it along the fence. Today, the silt socks are still in the same place. It's not going to catch any water. They didn't do any improvements.
I don't-
You guys
I
are
have to
missing
look
the
at where
whole
he's
boat
talking
because you
about.
need to get your boots on and come out there when it's raining and see what's going on. We have muddy water. It should never happen. Never.
So our office and the conservation district has been watching the site. What's on the approved plan is in. They've done some to improve what's there to try to make up for the sediment water that's leaving the site. We did the review for the stormwater design, and as he's saying, the post-construction stormwater management design with DEP, Conservation District, got approved for the final conditions. The water that's coming off the site is technically, and I don't live around, I don't know what it was before, but I've been out there after the storms, and it does look a lot less than I've seen some of the past storms.
No, I don't.
Absolutely.
I don't live there.
You're not in the ballpark, Scott. Come on, let's be realistic.
I don't live there, Ron, and I'm saying, I'm not
saying.
trying to downplay anybody, but what I'm seeing when I go out there, I mean, it's for what I've heard, what I've seen pictures of previous, it's less than, and if it's
No.
not for some of these storms, obviously this past weekend it's
No.
not. There's no way that the storm's gonna be less for that storm. Just keeps
We're-
it. It's just
We're
not
not,
gonna
we're not denying when you get a 6-inch rain, the whole township has issues of water.
Yeah.
I'm saying, how are you gonna move forward with this project now that there are ruts that have been established since March? And you're thinking your stormwater plan at the end of this plan is gonna work. It can't work because the ground is not gonna filter half the water you're thinking it's gonna. It's gonna follow the same path with less restriction.
So,
I mean, come on, Scott, you
Jen, I
gotta
think
realize
was, so
that.
Ron,
You gotta
John,
realize that.
hold on a second. I think you're the only one that I had copied on it from this room because it was correspondence with the contractor, but they tried to submit a change to their soil amendment. They want to do that. I sent it to Dean just today as well because they didn't send it to them. They need to review it as well. Our conversations are, the site is not what they designed. Right now, it does not stand in the same soil conditions, characteristics that they said, here's how it's gonna operate. We went back to them and said, you have to do testing and show us what those infiltration rates are so that we can then move forward and say it will operate. I agree exactly with what you're saying. On that end of it, 100%, because we're seeing the same thing.
So then
And
my
that's like-
question is, why would you let them continue tomorrow or Wednesday? Why would you not make them stop what they're doing? Because what they've done to now isn't working. Why would you let them start Wednesday and keep on going what they're doing?
Because we don't know what they're doing tomorrow until we say, at this point, we don't agree with what you're doing if you're gonna make those same assumptions. So that's what we approached them with and said, you need to do testing to show us that you will achieve what you need to achieve in the end. And that's been well known ever since the board approved the plan, is that this site has to operate with a 20% reduction of the flow from before this ever started. There has to be infiltration on the site to back up that reduction of flow as well. So until they can show that, they're never gonna get a permit to operate the site.
But in the meantime, what do we do? What do we do in the meantime?
We're waiting for the construction, waiting for the sites. I mean, we can't really, I don't know what jurisdiction I have to shut them down and if we're asking them for additional information.
Mr. Drunkmiller, you're out there, that's where what options do we have? This clearly is not a good situation.
Yeah, we've been trying to work with them. I'll be honest, they have been very agreeable to our recommendations. We tried to beef up some of their BMPs out there to handle the sediment that's being washed off the site. We've asked them to stabilize as much as they can, as fast as they can. Obviously with May, it was impossible to get any kind of stabilization out there at all. We were supposed to go out there today. We had an inspection lined up today, but they told us not to come out because everything's a mess and they wanted to get everything cleaned up and fixed before we come out there. So hopefully the end of the week we'll be out there to do an inspection. Now here's the thing that you need to understand with the NPDES permit. It's a stormwater discharge permit. Basically that allows them to discharge stormwater off the site. Okay. Now, there are some requirements that they can't be life-threatening or, threat to or endangering health and environment and things like that. I understand the issue that Floyd Kurtz is having on his property, and I'm trying to get in touch with DEP to get some kind of clarification on what we can do to make sure that that gets rectified before they leave and go away forever. The other thing is, you have to understand is that there will be sediment problems out there until that site is green. That's just the way it's gonna be. Those BMPs cannot handle 100% of the sediment coming off the site. That's why they have the permit that allows them to discharge stormwater. Okay, it's not gonna be 100% clean until that site is 100% green. I'll tell you that right now. We're dealing with residential homeowner developments across the county that are in the same situation as you guys are.
So
Okay.
why was it in such good vegetation state? They didn't farm it for a year, cut it in mulch hay. Why did they strip the topsoil?
I can't answer that because that's probably a construction detail that I'm not aware of why they did it. Maybe it's a structural thing
I think
as
that's
a
more,
result of the, what's that?
I think every site they strip the topsoil.
Yeah, I don't know the details.
You put it right back, they reshape the
Subsoil and put it back.
Yeah, like Scott said, they are supposed to put amended soils in across that almost the entire site, if I'm correct.
It's not the
And
entire
that is-
site, but it is.
And that can't be done until they're pretty much done with the installation of panels and infrastructure.
Once we had those panels up, they were out today making ruts, ripping up a little bit of grass that has grown and compacting the soil.
Yep.
How in the world is water gonna filter through the soil when it's packed?
Well, that's where Scott was
That's
talking
the
about.
exact thing we're putting on, the onus is on them to show that. If they don't have that, then they have to, it's part of the zoning approval they receive for the site. If they can't achieve that, then the site can't move forward. But that's what we're asking for at this point, because to be honest with you, I brought this up to them and we've been notifying them ever since we saw the rollers running the site and compacting it. And they kept saying, we talked to our engineers, they think it's okay. They knew we were gonna be asking the question.
Saying that.
So then all you gotta do is say, okay, You're done until you prove to me you can do this, because they're gonna keep going, keep going. Once they're done, they're from North Carolina. See you later.
Texas, California.
See you later.
I mean, we can,
Once they got
we
what
can
they want,
evaluate where we are.
once they
and
got
how we
what
can
they
shut them
want,
down for
what do
that.
they care?
We made that request to them to see that.
As a farmer, you can't say we can go out there and do that, and you guys wouldn't be on our
Well,
butts.
we wouldn't terminate their permit if it's not working in accordance to their plan. So if they don't get their permit terminated, they're gonna have to pay so many dollars a year to keep that open.
That doesn't good do
And
us
if
any
they don't, then they would be in violation, and then we would have to forward that up to DEP for enforcement.
So our
And to
crops
that
get
same
washed
point-
out, continued washed out, and we can't plant in the fields now because we keep water, and they get fined, but what can you do?
So the,
Yeah, I understand.
so that question of where does this go? What they're doing on the site is still per the construction plan. The end game is to have that infiltration and have this achieved the way it should be. We have asked them to do that well before they would plan on doing it. If they come back and they can't meet that, there may be reason to say we need to shut them down, and that needs to occur before they proceed. If they can't get that on the site, and I think, Michelle, if we want to expedite that request, is that, I feel like that. But right now, the work they're doing on the site, it is per the construction plan. If the end product can't be achieved, which is what we've already requested, then yeah, there is a reason that we can say, okay, at this point, you need to stop and not move forward. They have not requested any money to be released for work that they've done. There's plenty of money in there if there ever needed to be somebody to come in and stabilize the site outside of them, if it came to that point. That part, that isn't an issue. That's not gonna get you the good grass topsoil that was there before, but it will get grass and topsoil back in.
But
At no cost to the
isn't
township.
that what you need though, to have your filterization plan work?
Yeah, and that's.
So much soil, water has to seep into that barn,
And that's
and
what
it's
they
not.
still have to, but
That's-
they're
that's
not at the point
that's
where
not
it's
gonna
supposed
happen.
to be.
They're not that phase yet of the construction project. Once they're pretty much done, then they'll come in there near the end and do the amended soils and things like that, that'll promote that infiltration.
Well, I'll bet you're straight that it'll never work, because those ruts will never go away unless you close them.
Yeah, and they should grade those out.
How? The freaking panels are up. What are they gonna use, a hoe?
I don't know. They won't get their permit terminated.
But until then, we're gonna drown.
Well, hopefully those basins will start operating more efficiently and hold the water.
But they had it since May to go in and work when it was dry, and they didn't do anything. Nobody held them accountable to do it. Now we're in a rainy spell, and you want them to fix their retention ponds. And you know, the funny part about it is they planted their grass in May, and they went and dumped more water out, and they took their water truck, and kept trying to keep the dust down, and spread it over their grass and
I
regenerate their
suggested that,
grass.
I did suggest that to them. I gave them that recommendation.
And that's all you can do is suggest to them?
That's all we can do is, and if we put it in a report, and if they continue to can operate in that same manner, we don't have enforcement capability. We just work on voluntary compliance. And if they continue not to listen to our recommendations, we have to issue that up to DEP. And then the DEP comes out and does the enforcement or issues an NOV. We don't do that.
Not a problem for the end of the project then.
So what's our next step here to get this under control? And I agree, I mean, if they went in today after 10 inches of rain, they don't give, they don't care about the end result. I mean, that's pretty blatant, don't you think? I mean, common sense.
I think most sites, when you have a rain like that, they call the day off. I mean, it's just
That's a done deal.
the end of the story, that you see that everywhere.
They destroyed that thing.
And there just doesn't seem to be any,
For 3 days.
I don't see.
Hold on.
Fencing for
Right,
socks.
that's what they did. So where's the filtration?
Site like that, because they know it's all
No,
coming
we still
down.
dump trucks.
So should they have layers of socks to retain that? They're not doing that. I think it's my other big question is, I was up there, in the heat of that storm yesterday. That retention, that multi-acre retention right on the north side of the railroad. It's the first one the water gets to as it passes underneath there. There's nothing in there. That was retained, nothing. Makes me wonder, was that built to specification? And what is that multi-acre thing?
Now, that basin on the north side of the road is only to capture water coming off of the construction site, not the water that's coming up from above.
No, he's saying the first larger pond, once you come under the railroad.
Oh,
tracks.
under the railroad, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a multi-acre
The
pond. It
first-
opens up
first
to a
pond.
big, but that was retaining nothing yesterday.
Or the last three steps.
Right, but if you look at the geography there, it's an open, and obviously it's higher, so it's gonna flow downhill. But my question is you have a huge amount of retention there, but there's no head wall or anything to retain it.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
I was thinking maybe it was a seepage pond,
No,
but
it
there's
will-
not even holding water to seep.
again, it's a temporary, right now it's in the temporary construction phase. I mean, the pipes they have in, and we're not out there shooting elevations, it's just, I mean, we go by eye unless something's really off.
Well, something's really off.
But it's just,
There's no water. There's no water.
may not be really holding that water until it is
Oh,
a
no, it
permanent
isn't.
state.
I saw it, it was
That's-
running over Fleetwood Lyons Highway and that pond.
The second pond isn't holding water either.
The second pond was
I thought
filled.
I've seen that, I was gonna say, I thought I'd seen that with the water.
Basically, the spillway was the Fleetwood Lyons Highway. That was the,
This weekend, yeah, you can see the mud.
but I think, I'm not certain what the purpose of that large, because that area is probably 3 times the size of the
That-
lower retention pond.
It will be a
That would
retain,
hold an enormous amount of water.
and it will be in the end when it's final, when its conversion happens. I know that for sure, but currently I can't say if that's, I just know per the plan and the temporary state, they would have flagged it as well if there was a wrong size pipe in that outlet. So I'm not
I don't
sure.
know that there's an outlet section there though. It just
There's no
flows
head wall,
right,
it's just a big area.
it just flows, it's like they forgot to put the rest there of the pond.
There is a pipe there that, I know we have the pictures from it that, I know it doesn't hold a lot of water, but when it comes through, it actually is clear on, I'm not gonna speak to this past storm, but when it comes through that area, it's clear water running through that area. I mean,
You know, this is all water that's coming downstream from up on the other side of it. But regardless, it's coming through there, so it has to be managed.
I have to look at it, my guess is
My
that it's
thinking
not,
is that something's missing there.
and it may be
Normally,
that
what
in
you
a
do is you
temporary
put a
state.
retention wall with a pipe in there to slow the water down. But it's just an open spillway. I think there's something missing.
With no grass from the NRC.
Yeah, no grass.
Took it all out, all dirt.
But I don't know if this is the final plan or if they
I guess,
overlooked something or if it's part of the construction process. I don't know.
I'll have our inspector go and take a look at that.
Yeah, if you
Make
would,
sure
because there's something that isn't right there.
Okay.
And I think a lot of this, if that large area would have retained water on Sunday, I don't think the water would have crossed Fleetwood Lyons. If it would have been minimalized. I just don't see the wisdom of having that pond there if it's not retaining it. Maybe I'm missing something.
it may, yeah, and I think it may, my guess would be that it's not really meant to do a lot during the temporary state, but in the final, that will be part of the kind
I
of
would hope.
two-stage.
I would hope, because otherwise they sacrificed an awful lot of real estate for nothing there.
So I think, a question about moving forward, I think it's especially after the meeting here, the request that we made for the soil amendments, and that was probably 3 weeks ago. I just assumed that they were, the last meeting I had, which is about a week and a half ago, I asked for an update on that, and they said, we haven't gotten one yet from our engineers, so we can't, I don't have anything to pass along to you. That I can ask for in a meeting, answer on that one, or the need to shut down the site for proceeding, and if they can't show that they can reach that infiltration rate and the final end game for what they need on their permits, then I think we do need to stop progress on that. Of course, double check with Michelle's office here and make sure everybody's on the same page with how we proceed with that. But I think it's reasonable. We have given them time and had no response on that, and that's for immediate response.
The other thing, if it is diverting onto the roads, you could send 23, 26 obstruction and nuisance letter to them, so that if they don't correct it, then they're subject to summary offense. And also, I just, because I don't have the motor vehicle code here, I reached out to Chris. He said there's a section 3351 regarding parking, because I was looking at the book to see if you could issue temporary no parking. I went over to the officer, 3351, when it's practical to do so, to stop off the roadway, would you guys look at issuing parking if they're parking along the roadway? He said it is unlawful to stop, stand, or park on the roadway when it is practicable to do so off the roadway.
I think we reissued the requests at this point that we've made, and if they don't bring those up to speed by
Well, maybe
Wednesday,
we have to be a little firmer.
then I think we need to just say, again, it's another stop work because they're not addressing the issues we have. I think that's for Weaver Road, it's the access to any part other than the approved entrances.
Thank you.
Is there,
That's my next.
I addressed the concern she had with the people in the roadway, any vehicles parked on the roadway, there should be none of that. They have their property. And again, they're agreeable to do so, but unfortunately, you kind of have to, it seems like you gotta be on them every day.
But it's clear they say what you want to hear, but do what they want, and that we just gotta end that.
Since the beginning.
Since the,
That tracks.
Yeah, since the beginning, it seems like it's been.
and I have another question for you guys, if I can. You know, they had the matting along Mertz Road, which they were supposed to work on, which they clearly didn't, okay? Now, they took the matting away from Mertz Road, but they left all the dirt in the floodplain. Where do you think happened this week? There's no silt fence around the piles, there's no grass on the piles, but they wanted to take the mats away. So they just pushed the dirt on piles onto my topsoil. Okay? How are they gonna now go in there and get that dirt off without causing compaction? That's what the mats were put in there for.
So we asked them for the roadway permit because they were accessing Mertz Road the way they shouldn't. They should not have been anywhere near the road that they are now. They should have been going in the one entrance near your house and that's it. And they didn't
Never
follow that at all.
Never.
Well, I know. That's why we kept pushing them and telling them to get off the road. Now they're subject to whatever we need to do for that roadway, protect it.
And so they're leaving mud and debris on the roadways.
No, they left the
Listen,
piles.
No,
There's no
they
matter.
just pushed the piles off the mats, took the mats, and now the piles are just sitting in your floodplain. And the water's just washing it
When
away.
I was there, I didn't see it in the floodplain, but I'm not saying.
You want some pictures?
I didn't see him in the floodplain.
Is there a violation of the improvement agreement?
Oh, my
What's
God.
that?
If there's mud and debris on the roadway, there's a violation of the improvements agreement.
Yeah, there haven't been,
The mud, they're just piled up. Are they
the
gonna-
mud's on his property. They have an agreement with him for the access on that. I mean, that's something that he can address directly with them.
Come on out, Scott. Put your boots on, come on out. We'll go walk.
Can't you address that? You have an agreement with them for your property, correct?
The reason they couldn't put the poles so long span was because you guys wouldn't let them put it in the floodplain. I understand that. But now what allows them to put the dirt in the floodplain and just let it go?
They told me that they were not accessing the floodplain. Every time I was out there, they weren't in the floodplain. That's why they had the 2 permits for the
I have
roads.
swampland Florida myself, okay? I can feed you all kinds of lip service. Come on, Scott. This doesn't lie. Look at the pile of dirt in the floodplain with the water going around it, beside the pole that's in your floodplain. They can tell you whatever they want, but pictures don't lie. Pictures don't lie. You see what? You see anything around it?
We gotta.
Nothing. No silt fence, no
Yeah,
straw,
straw.
no gas.
And that's
No
what
more.
Yes,
I
It's
agree.
used strong
Yeah.
around it.
There's
Yeah.
things that need to be done.
I did the best
I
I
mean,
could.
them going in today was a clear sign. Okay, we.
I don't know, as far as the
We
meeting,
need
it
to
would have to be a
change the guards here.
site thing, site issue.
I'll have my guy come look at it.
How do, and I'm just curious, because we'll get calls. Do you guys want official complaints filed? Because I don't want to start reacting to everything that we get.
But we have multiple, you know what I mean? I mean, I don't think it's just an isolated case. An official complaint, I guess, what does that at the end do? It's, we still gotta address it.
I agree, and it just, usually, I mean, this is an open project, big project, it's just, a lot of times, if we're getting multiple calls from the same person, taking up time and bill to the township. This we have for the solar farm, obviously, but that's the.
I mean, they can put it in place. That's what, if we're down the road.
Yeah. I mean, we can just get the calls and keep going on this project, absolutely, it's there. We're trying to, so definitely is a lot of time on our end for trying to handle all the calls and emails.
I think we're just gonna, I think we gotta get this worked out. I think they'll clean up their act, it's their, I don't know what our responsibility or liability.
Well, there has to be some penalty.
There has to be some penalty. They have not done what they said, and they're just doing whatever they want. I mean, it's obvious.
I'll look back at the improvements agreement, I'll do some research and talk to Chris about the cease and desist. I mentioned to the officer about the parking, I mean, it's a minor issue, but at least it's simply something. Do you want us to send a 23-26 notice, notifying those that are in violation, and I think they'll correct it against a summary offense, but at least it's showing some brag.
I don't think the water's going across the road. It was just these meters going.
Okay. So they're
It's
not
not a
doing
regular
anything,
thing.
okay, then that takes that off the table then.
Yeah, that's.
Okay. I was trying to think of options that were out there.
Our major concern is that they can't block township or something. They can't be citizens from going back and forth. So they do that. They just don't care.
I think right now we have that stop work on that. If we want to push these other items and say, have we addressed
100%.
before we lift it?
We're gonna go, I think we should look at every violation that they have and say, listen, we're not gonna lift it until you fix this today. You've had plenty of opportunity to do the right thing, and you obviously chose not to, because you think you can do whatever, and that we just cannot have it. They have to, I mean, I would suggest you go out there, you walk it, you look at all the violations, and you just say, this is fixed. It's a no-go.
And honestly, since we had the site meeting with the request, the complaint that came in on Weaver Road, went out there, listed off what needed to be done. I saw that they were starting to work. I was off last week. I had no chance to get out there and see it until this morning. I went out this morning, realized that they didn't limit the access completely as requested. They haven't updated the driveway, so there just hasn't been that opportunity to follow through with everything that we discussed. If we have the stop work order now, we just follow through with it and say, here's the additional items, because I did it today after the meeting, follow up with them, let them know what they need to do before that. I was concentrated more on the fact that there's the downstream issue, which, talking with Dean, that it does sound like that's gonna be a concern you're discussing with DEP or have already.
Well, I'm sorry.
That on the Floyd Kurtz property.
Yeah, I called them right after we got on the day. I still wasn't able to get hold of them. I have a call into them to see how, or what we have to do, or what can be done to help rectify that situation.
Some of that downstream flow, the flow off of the site, some of that's more directly related to the NPDS project than what we have.
Scott, are you afraid of these guys?
See, this is ridiculous. I'm not gonna sit here.
Yeah, let's not attack. We're just trying to find a solution here, and we try and be fair, but this is clearly not.
Well, I had a problem with the county district, and we got rid of everybody about 12 years ago, and we got Dean and somebody else to do it. So I went through that. You know, what has to be done has to be done.
I mean, what, you're, and we've never met in Floyd?
No,
I'm Larry.
Larry.
Hale.
What is your complaint on the site?
I'm on the board of the district.
Okay.
so what can the district do to help enforce? Is there anything, Dean, that we can?
I mean,
Well,
I
you're
don't
right.
have
I mean,
the
you said
NPDS
I was on
permit
the
for the
State
discharge.
Land Preservation Board for 12 years, on the state board. I was on the Farm Service Agency, we oversaw the federal agriculture programs for 16 years. But what's happening to these farmers over here on preserved farms is a crime. You're here to help us.
I'm here enforcing the land development plans. I'm enforcing what's on that plan. If it's a discharge.
You're here to help our community.
I agree with you.
Okay, we'll do it.
But the discharge permit isn't with the township. I mean, that's
Well, figure out how
to
to-
sit there and point the finger at me for that is not, it's just not accurate here.
Right.
And that's, I think, to take the
Yeah,
blunt
so
of
we're
it.
not gonna, we're gonna work at this, but is there anything, your end that you can,
We can just recommend that to the contractor out there to beef up their BMPs. If they don't seem to be working, we maybe have to go back to the drawing board on some things out there. If Floyd continues to have a problem, that's where I need to get in hold of DEP, see what can be done there. Because that's an obvious issue there, and to the residents, I think on the corner there, right?
Yeah, me.
And you too.
Yeah, we're having
So
personal water
there's
too.
3 wells that are impacted.
He's in the rental house.
Oh, okay. If there still continues to be problems out there, we can bring DEP in on it, and maybe they can be more of a heavy hand than we.
I think
Well,
we're
maybe
at
it's
that.
time to do that.
Okay.
I think we're at
I think we've been struggling with the lack of involvement from the conservation district because of the NPDES permit that DEP
Well,
issued.
I'm gonna push back on that one. We've been out there more times than we're required to be out there. See, we're supposed to inspect these sites so many times, over a period of time, and we've been out there twice as much as we should have.
Well,
We've been out there.
We've
So,
all been out there.
Okay,
a lot.
so we've been out there, but we're supposed to be. So I think we're doing a pretty good job trying to stay on top of this stuff.
But I think the situation has been such that it demands more an active hand to bring DEP in on this situation.
And I'm not gonna argue that. I'm not gonna argue that point with you.
And you're our contact with DEP.
Yeah, I know. Well, I have a phone call into DEP, South Central office, to the guy that's in charge of the 102 program down there. So I'll talk to him about it. Hopefully tomorrow he calls me back. I can bring this up to him.
That's where I think we need to, that's the agency that I think that can come in here and help this situation. Our hands are tied with the NPDES permit. You said there tonight, and I'm not arguing with you, it's a construction site. There's gonna be stormwater exiting the property, and it's not gonna be clean all the time.
Right.
So I understand that, but we're having problems that we can't address. And I don't think you can address them either if DEP's not involved. And I think they just need to realize the importance of this issue, not, to the residents that live in the area. It's been a huge problem. Everything has been followed, and we've been doing the inspections that need to be done, but we need some help from somebody higher up the food chain. And that's what we're hoping can come out of this tonight.
Understood. And like I said, when I talk to him, I'll bring it up. Maybe we need to bring DEP out to site, have a site meeting.
100%.
I feel like Brian, whatever it takes, we need help on
We need help, and whatever it takes, and if you need help for me to push from the top down, then that's what you gotta do, because we can only, the squeaky wheel's gonna get the wheel. We try and be fair, we try and use common sense, but they are going in the opposite direction lately. They're just pushing us around like.
They're just trapping them.
Yeah, they're just pushing us around because they think they can.
Yeah.
They can't. They cannot.
And if Scott needs help, he should yell at us, whoever, go listen to him.
I just want to say too, that the complaints, and it was part of my question about the complaint actually being filed. Anything that we've gotten, we've addressed, and I've met with them specific to the complaint. When you had the complaint, I went out there, met with them, told them, here's what it is. I haven't had a chance to follow up with them to see that they've gone through with it
But
until
they
today.
still aren't doing it, because like I said, this
But again,
morning,
and-
7:00 this morning,
In my defense, and the only,
they're right there in
I
the road
was,
again.
yeah, did I have the help to follow up with it when I was out of the office? No, but that was a week and a half ago I spoke with you, and every time I get a complaint, I go right to them.
I think, Scott, I
We're
think
just not getting the follow through.
Correct. You're going to them, but they're not doing their end. And we gotta bring the heavy hand out now.
And if that's what it, obviously, the number of people here tonight reinforces that.
Right.
And I've only heard 2 or 3 complaints specifically from people that are here.
But
Everybody else, I
if
have.
there's 2 or
So
3,
I
there's
can-
probably 20 or 30 that people just don't say it. We gave them the benefit of the doubt, now we gotta bring the heavy hand down, I guess that's, and I think, I'm not saying that you're not following through on the complaints. I'm saying on their end, they're not living up to what they're supposed to be. They're giving lip service and doing what they want, and that's just done.
So this morning we talked, and we immediately shut down the site. And
I
we'll,
think the
it will
discussion-
stay shut down until we feel that it should be opened again, or that the work will continue in the way it's supposed to.
I think-
Now we're getting to them.
I think there's a need to make sure we're, because, and if we over push on this, there's gonna be the immediate legal pushback on that. Not saying that that's not something we can't deal with,
I
but I
fully
think if we
expect that.
follow through with Chris's office on how we
Correct.
handle it,
You have to have a
Starting tomorrow.
conversation,
we'll be
Yeah,
comfortable in where we're at. And I
but
think
you
that's-
guys gotta work together, but enough is enough. I mean, I'm not saying you're not pushing, but if you're going out there and saying, and they say, yeah, we'll do whatever, and then you leave and they do whatever they want, it's clearly that's what's happening.
And it's, that
And don't take that
Unfortunately,
personally,
has
Scott.
been that
You
2 or
have to
3
return the calls.
Yeah, and you're
You guys
following
return
up,
the call.
I'm just saying,
But as soon
there's
as you
no
guys
penalty
leave-
to them.
Yes.
They do what they want.
They're just doing what they want, and that just has to end. DEP has to get in here. If we would've went and did the stream like we wanted to, which, you know what I mean? They would've been all over us, and here they are. I'm just saying, we need to bring the hammer.
I got you.
We can do that at night, though, right?
Yeah. All right, Elaine, you don't have anything else to add?
I just wanted to note it that first retention pond, like where you turn into Weaver's Road, it only had a couple inches of water. That is not doing its job, obviously. And then the other 2 retention ponds were overflowing and water's running like a river across the road.
It's extreme, but I think even in a non-extreme thing, we had issues there. And just going back to work today, after 10 inches of rain, that's just a clear indication that they just don't give a shit.
And I just wanted to know, they're so inconsiderate, they are the most inconsiderate, I mean, obviously they're from Texas, California, wherever. According to their license plate, they bus them in vans and in the morning. I mean, I've lived back there for 38 years, that was great farmland. It's just very hard for me to see how somebody could let their farmland be destroyed like that.
So, and I'll say this, and I am in no way defending them, but I want it to be known because when I brought it up to them, they had pushback on it, and I asked them to attend the meeting, they did not attend it tonight, obviously. But they've said when they're out there trying to control traffic, they're unloading some of their materials that they can't get the truck onto the site, just unloading it, putting it on the site. They fall short on that. Trust me, the day I was out there, I saw it and called them out on it, but they say they're not getting a lot of compliance with the people around them. They had a flagger that almost got hit because of somebody that burned through. They wanted to show me who it was. I said, no, it's not, I'm not here to do that. But I think just be overly compliant with them when they have that traffic control up there so that they can't come back and point the finger.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
just
don't
want
know
all
who that
the blame
would've
to be
been. I
on them
definitely
because
didn't
they're
want that.
obviously giving themselves that opportunity
But
too much.
I will just add to that. The frustration becomes when you give up your land for them to be safe, for our residents and for themselves to work on the mats. And they choose not to, they choose to work on a public road. Irritates a lot of people who have to sit there and watch it. Okay, if they were where they were supposed to be, they wouldn't need a flag.
And I think the meetings, just like the meetings on Weaver
I
Road,
agree.
why can't they meet in the farm?
I have no idea why.
I mean, that's just, it's
It
just,
was a
and,
point
and,
blank
Because they don't
request
have, they get away with it.
and that's what has everybody frustrated, Scott,
Yes.
tonight. So we gotta put the hammer down, we gotta give them the rules, and it either follows or we just shut them down, and we gotta be in touch with Chris. I don't want a lawsuit on my hands, but we gotta push back now.
Like you want to
The
try.
Weaver's Road is a very simple solution. They have a big shoulder there between the construction site and Weaver's Road. Stone that in, and that's where they should be unloaded. Then they're off of Weaver's Road.
Yeah, they said they would just block the road. They would just block the road to offload and unload. Meanwhile, they have, you know, what, 100-acre field there that they could be
Well,
in
they
the
also have
field.
that big shoulder between the road and the fence. All they'd have to do is stone that in
Exactly. Yeah,
and use that.
right.
I don't see why that should be so hard.
Yeah, that's part of the suggestion.
That's-
Obviously, it's not.
It's not gonna be a suggestion now anymore.
Well, we'll work with
Understood.
Rich and do the research. and
Thanks for your
put together
understanding,
something That's legally enforceable.
Anything else on this? Okay, we'll move on to the road work.